And a hardcore firing pin stop, kind of up there with the extractor, sort of. But the firing pin stop, this guy right here, rolling in a picture, of course, it takes a lot of abuse, a lot of beating from the, basically what, you know, you're getting that impact, and again, it's unloaded, but we're getting that impact from that hammer, and of course it's boom, it's coming back, and it slides on the hammer right there at that point. So the firing pin stop takes quite a lot of abuse, and it has to retain that firing pin, and it holds, it's a hand fitted fit to the extractor, it holds it in. So you don't want to go cheap on your firing pin stop, because I've heard of and I've seen in person where someone will just pull the trigger and all of a sudden it cracks in half because it's a cheap metal injection molded firing pin stop. Don't want to mention any brands here, Springfield, but that's why you want to replace it. And Springfield, like I said, Springfield, if you're watching, love your products. I think you make a great base entry 1911. When you really put a lot of effort into it with your Marine Corps operator, your TRP, stuff like that, I think you make a hell of a 1911. But your base model metal injection molded parts, they're just not doing it for me. I've seen too many of them break, so that's why I'm doing all this. Anyway, moving on. Hex-Head grip screws. These again are Teflon coated, so they're black, but they are stainless. I do not like your standard flathead grip screws. Now you're going to see something like this. Brings me to like the CZ75. Such a great combat gun. Everyone loves CZ. That just has a beautiful grip. But the reason why I mention that gun is they have a Phillips head screw holding in the grip, so it just kind of gives you a cheesy feel. Although the gun is not cheesy at all. And I just don't want that with the 1911. I just want to get the perfect hex tool, just unscrew it when I need to, so that kind of prevents stripping out stuff. Although you can strip it out if you're not using the right hex tool. Low profile, doesn't strip out. Also the Hex-Head, or sorry, the grip screw bushings, also stainless steel, also required. I didn't want to mess around or do anything like that. I just want to get straight to the point, get some quality parts. So also moving on. Now the grips, I like that classic feel. You know, if I wanted to be more utilitarian, and perhaps I should in a serious defensive 1911, but if I really wanted to, my most excellent choice for a utilitarian, don't care about looks, you just care about how it works, is the Gunner. It's the golf ball grips. The Marine Corps uses them on their M40 or their M45s. And now those are just sick. They look sick, and they have such a grip on them. I've always thought about ordering some, but I like the classic look. So these are Ed Brown Coca-Cola, the fat profile, not the slim. Because as much as I love the 1911 for being slender, when I add those grips on, it feels just right for me. So I wanted some hardwood that looked nice. Threw some linseed oil in it to really get that grain to come out. And then I covered the whole thing in black enamel paint and then wiped it off so all the paint stayed in the checkering. And these look sick, which is probably a huge reason, one of the big reasons why people think this thing came out of World War II on the range, which of course it didn't, but kind of gives that classic look to it back when they were doing the, you know, the plastic grips and the walnut grips. So anyway, moving on. And my one Wilson Combat part is the Factory Plus firing pin spring. You know, going back to my discussion on the 80 series situation, I don't think it's necessary to have all those extra parts, just more stuff that can go wrong, more stuff to be tedious with. If you have a proper, pretty heavy duty firing pin spring with a lightweight firing pin, such as you know, the titanium firing pin from Springfield, or this lightweight but bar stock Ed Brown firing pin, with a proper heavy duty firing pin spring, that is not a problem. You're not going to have any drop firings or anything like that. So it's really it's such a simple solution. Instead of milling out the frame and slide and coming up with this crazy 80 series system, all you have to do is just get titanium firing pin and a heavy duty spring, such as the Wilson Combat that I have in there, and that would have solved it if you really wanted to go crazy with it. So anyway, moving on here. Now I'm going to go over the wish list. There are 2 things I want to order and eventually replace on this gun, but I don't have an immediate need to do it. But in the long term, I am going to do it. Going back to, I told you we'd come back to it, the slide stop. So far, so good. Springfield Armory doing a great job. It is cast, but seems to be holding up just well. And I'm pretty sure if it would have broke, it would have broke already. If it was substandard, this would have came out a long time ago on the rental wall. So it seems to be doing just fine. It stays back, it locks the slide in the last round. It does everything it's supposed to do, and it's just been a great part. But I think, in my personal opinion, Mr. Second Amendment's opinion, the best 1911 slide stop you will ever find on the market is going to be the Ed Brown. It's a forged slide stop. And of course, I got the part numbers flashing right now with a link. It's a forged slide stop. Okay, now if you're not familiar with drop hammer forging or hot forging, especially with carbon steel, stainless steel, you got to forge that way. But a forging, kind of going back to Springfield's frame and slide, basically a forging is when you take a hot piece of steel with a huge press, a hydraulic press, huge apparatus, and you basically drop hammer forge it. You put it in the mold, you put that hot piece of metal in there and press the pedal, and boom, it just strikes it with all that pressure. What it does is it aligns all the fibers in the metal, and then you machine it, heat treat it, and finish it and all that stuff, and it makes one hell of a metal part. It's literally the hardest steel, the hardest way you can ever make metal, as far as I'm aware of. Which is why, going back to the samurai swords of Japan, they were all hammer forged, folded and folded and folded over, all the grains aligned, and it's one of the strongest pieces of steel you can ever make. So same concept applies. With the amount of pressure, force, and stress that part takes, it is eventual on the wish list for sure. Moving on, the second last thing on the wish list is just a plunger tube, Ed Brown plunger tube. The Springfield one seems to be doing just fine, and honestly, that part doesn't take a whole lot of stress. It's just, it is metal injection molded, and if it ever comes loose, I'm just going to straight up order it. But that's not really an immediate need. This whole gun is just doing fine with the Springfield parts that are in there. Oh, and one last thing, going back to the parts that are on the gun, that is a Springfield stainless bushing, which was also Teflon coated. But seemed to work just fine. That is the only, ironically, that is the only part that when I bought the Springfield, I gutted it. But that is the only part that I bought that Springfield part and put it back in the gun. That is the only Springfield part, that is the only part on this gun where I stripped all the original stuff down, but I managed to buy a Springfield part and put it back in the gun with the same manufacturer. That's the only part I did. It was the stainless steel bushing. It fit perfectly, it's got the clearance, and it's doing well. So it just worked out. So I'm going to move on to some other supplies or other things that are going to be great to have for a 1911, whether you're building your own or just shooting and owning one. First of all is going to be the Birchwood Cassie synthetic oil. Out of all my oil, CLP, hops, oil, all the stuff I've ever seen, this seems to do the best with the 1911. It's great for the clearances. It's great. It stays in the gun. And I've shot nasty reloads through this gun that just burn powder cakes everywhere. This stuff just cuts through it. Beautiful for a 1911. Really love this stuff. Good job. And of course, when you're cleaning your gun, you're going to want some hops, number 9. I call it hops. Some people call it hoppies. Whatever works. If you saw my constitutional video, I actually had a little mini discussion about it. But anyway, great cleaning solvent that just gets the basic job done. And when I'm cleaning the barrel, of course, I'm going to grab my M-Pro 7 bore gel. I use this for my M1 Garand, my other match rifles and whatnot, to really get the lead and copper fouling out of the rifling itself. So this is what I use on the barrel, inside the barrel itself. Great product from M-Pro 7. And of course, let's talk about magazines for a second. Most of the magazines I own are standard Springfield basic factory 7-rounders, and they seem to function flawlessly. They are made of really well made construction, and just love it. And you see another manufacturer's magazine there. Kind of flirting with the enemy here. And another sidekick here, or companion to the gun, this is Hornady Tap Fpd, the 230 grain. Really nasty, but good, reliable, low recoil for what it is. Defensive ammunition, that's what I carry every day. I've done my own testing with it. I got some videos on that coming, but excellent ammunition to carry. And cycles, functions, of course, what you'd expect from Hornady. It cycles, functions just fine. Accuracy is superb as well. And something that you might want to get, I don't have any right now, but the Wilson Combat 8-round 1911 mags. The Wilson Combat mags are supposed to be the best 1911 mags ever made. And I have no reason to not believe that argument because of the quality of Wilson Combat. And they make some really quality guns, mags, parts, all that. And let's see, if you want to get into building 1911s or some things like that, I need to recommend some things to you. First of all is the Brown Sear Jig. If you're going to do any custom work, first of all, you should be trained, or you should gather the experience, or you should treat the gun especially with more respect, because it is Smith, it is messed with, and it could go off at any time. That's just how you want to treat it. But anyway, moving back, it's my little disclaimer, but the Brown Sear Jig, I don't have it, but I got the link for it. I'm letting somebody borrow it. But that's definitely what you want to have if you're going to do any serious professional work on a sear spring, or sorry, a sear. Putting the right angles, the right polish, the right, so it locks up with the hammer, so there's no hammer follow, there's no hammer jumping down on the slide like we talked about. You really want to have that sear jig, because if you don't get the angles right just with the hammer hooks and whatnot, you're going to end up with this hammer follow, which means you've either got a defective sear to hammer hooks fit, or there's some other issues going on. But basically you need that seared, that jig from Ed Brown. Comes with some shim and directions. A lot of stuff doesn't come with directions these days, so props to you, Ed Brown, for that, definitely. Also, I have the Washita Mountain, the Whetstone kit, got the parts number there from Brownells. Really should also, again, on loan right now, don't have them with me, but maybe I can put some pictures up. And basically with those, you're going to want to, have a nice set of Arkansas stone. Basically every gunsmith or everyone getting into it should definitely have those. Also the ceramic stone set, again on loan, but you got the Brownells number, all that stuff, the link to it. And you're going to want to have that for your very precise polish jobs. Definitely want to have those. Also going to have, okay, now this is really only going to matter if you have an A1 style 1911 like such. But you'll notice that the front sight, I should have talked about this when we went over the sight situation, but the the 1911 A1 from Springfield and many other manufacturers, the government front sight had utilized what's called a tenon. And basically it's a post, and I'll roll in some photos, but it's a post that goes through a slit in the slide. And then once it comes through the other side, you basically hammer it very carefully with the right tool. You hammer it so it's a tension fit. From what I understand, it's called a Morse joint. And it's supposed to be, still in use today in many products, but it's one of the strongest metal on metal joints you can possibly make. And that front sight, I mean, is anchored. That front sight is anchored because, and here it is. This is the front sight staking tool from Brownells. It comes with that wedge on there, which you can buy replacement tips. But this is, I don't know what the hell they made this out of. All right, Brownells, if you're watching, many props. This is the hardest metal I've ever encountered in my life. And it has to be because of what it does. So props to you, Brownells. Hell of a job on this thing. This thing is just hard metal quality product. Makes that job easy to do it professionally. And that's kind of, a lot of people look at that front sight situation when they're trying to replace a Tenon style front sight, and they get intimidated, and you should, because there's a little bit of craft involved here. But with the proper tools, this job becomes pretty easy, actually. Not easy, but it becomes less complicated, I should say. And moving on, another thing that you should have is the Loctite 620. This stuff, short of welding two pieces of metal together, short of doing that, this is just about as good as you can get in terms of welding without the the welder and all that stuff. So this really will lock down two metal parts almost irreversibly. You can almost barely, you're never going to be able to take those parts apart unless you apply a lot of heat and whatnot. So part of the process, when I put that front sight post in, I applied my 620 in there, and I used the front sight staking tool, and the job was done. And God help whoever is going to be trying to replace that in 12 years when the tritium runs out. Hopefully, well, it might just be me. I don't know. Stay tuned for the next 12 years if the gun channel is still on YouTube. But that looks like it's pretty much it. I'm just going to show you again.